Welcome to Progress Theory, a podcast where I explore what it takes for a human being to actually change and transform, in hopes that doing so will help create growth in both my life and yours. My name is Garrett, and today I'm going to be discussing what it takes to actually improve on a week to week basis. Because from what I can tell, the ability to learn from experience in a way that creates actual tangible change is one of the core things that separates people who achieve extraordinary things and build extremely impressive lives and those who stay stagnant throughout the course of their lifetime. So that creates the core question. How can we learn and improve on a week to week basis in very tangible ways without it eating up a significant amount of our time and energy? This is something I have been spending a lot of time thinking about over the last, I'd say 12 weeks specifically, but honestly over the last couple of years. For anyone who knows nothing about me, which is probably most of you, I am someone who cares a lot about growth. I always have. Since I was 18, I would say I've become somewhat obsessed with the idea of improving myself, getting better, building myself into a better person. And one of the core things I did in an effort to do this was journal and analyze and try to learn from my experiences to identify how can I improve? Where am I going wrong? What can I do better? And something I started to recognize over time is that when I look back over the course of weeks or months or years, no matter how much analysis I was doing, no matter how much I was trying to learn from my experience, it was very rarely turning into an actual change in my behavior. And so while I thought I was growing because my mindset was changing and my worldview was changing and my understanding of myself, the world, and growth was changing as a result of my experiences, it was very rarely turned into actionable steps that resulted in a change in my behavior. So when I looked back on months and years worth of time, my rate of growth was borderline stagnant because I was just doing the same things over and over and over. And I think it is extremely easy to do this. It's easy to go through life completely blind and not even journal or analyze and just kind of let life happen to you and do the same things on repeat without ever trying to iterate and change your behavior. But it's also easy to fall into this trap that I've been stuck in for a long time, where there's an overvaluation on analysis and insight and learning, and there's not enough time or energy put into turning insight into actionable changes in behavior. And I think there are three parts of this process that I've struggled with when trying to identify how can I start improving tangibly on a week-to-week basis. The first is there have been periods where there is just no real growth occurring. There's no attempt to learn from my experiences. I become somewhat stagnant and I just don't want to take the time to do it. And so there's no real compounding growth occurring because I'm just doing the same things over and over and over again. And I want to put all of my time into the work and no time into analyzing it to figure out how I can improve what I'm doing. And I don't think this is the worst problem. If you're taking action, that is a good thing because it's very easy to fall into the trap of overanalyzing without doing anything with the insight that's generated. But if all you're ever doing is working without ever taking time to think about how you can improve the work you're doing, your rate of growth is very limited or it stalls completely. Now, another problem, and this is one that I have fallen victim to specifically a lot throughout my lifetime, is an overemphasis on analysis and journaling and trying to think through things without actually putting the insight to action, without doing the work that it results in me knowing that I should do. So even if there is an action step, it never gets taken. It's very easy to do this. At least for people like me, analysis is very comfortable. It is fun and invigorating and comfortable to journal and to write and to theorize about how to improve. Actually taking action and doing the work that is boring and uncomfortable and repetitive is very difficult. And so creating a system in which most of the time is going to the actual action and only a small percentage of the time is going to analysis and iterative processing is huge, I think. Another problem that I've run into at multiple points is trying to take on too much at once. There's no sort of prioritization on what I'm trying to learn from my experiences and what changes I'm trying to establish and reinforce in my life. And so I will spend way too much time trying to think through every single lesson I can take from what I experienced, and then that will end up being 10 different lessons in 10 different areas that turn into 6 different action steps that I try to implement into my life in at one time. And it takes far too much time to do this, and it is completely ineffective because there's too much change going on at once. Energy and focus is a finite resource, and if you try to diversify that into too many things at once, you end up just failing to succeed in any of those areas. And that has been another thing that has taken me, I'm ashamed to say, years to figure out, because I just want to grow so badly, and I don't want to sacrifice things that I think are important and that I know changes that I know I want to make. But I think the reality that I'm starting to accept is it's very important to prioritize and to simplify things down to one core change that you're trying to make. And that brings me to the last point of tension, the point of failure in my trying to learn how to improve on a weekly basis. And that is a lack of measurable action steps. It is very easy to get lost in insight, into thinking, wow, I understand this so much differently than I did before. The difference in my perception of this thing is astounding. And it's very easy to feel like you're succeeding just because you've changed your perception on something. And that shift in perspective feels like enough, but it is not. If a change in perspective or a new insight is not turned into a tangible, measurable action step, it will lead to no change in your life. And I think this is what has held me back the most, because I've spent years of time journaling and analyzing and shifting my worldview and my perspective and how I see things. And yes, that is valuable. That is a prerequisite to change. But unless that is turned into an actual change in how I show up in the world, I will get the same results. And everyone will. That is not unique to me. And so, not only generating that insight, but then using it to create a plan of action that you can measure and track is huge. That creates a cycle of improvement that is repeatable and tangible and tied to real change in behavior. And I don't think this process is something that is unique to me in any way. I think the ability to learn from experiences in a way that creates actual change on a recurrent basis, that is something that separates the best of us from everyone else. And that is a harsh value statement, but some people are just far more effective than others. There is no denying that, at least by the metrics that we judge people on. And I think the core thing that separates someone who is able to learn every week one specific improvement to make, and they're able to actually take action on that over the course of 52 weeks, 104 weeks, over the course of 5 years, 10 years, the difference that will make, whether it's in business, in finances, in health, in relationships, in emotional mastery or personal exploration, this can be applied to any process. Anything you do, you can try to identify, how can I do this better? How can I be better in this area? How can I show up better for my wife or husband? How can I serve my friends better? How can I improve my diet? How can I improve my journaling process? Literally every single activity there is a path of progression within. And learning how to improve at a faster rate, like that skill set can transfer to everything. And the difference, I'm looking at a compound calculator. It's impossible to actually break down most growth to a perfectly tangible metric. But when just looking at a compound calculator, the difference between someone who grows at a 1% rate and a 5% rate over the course of 1 year is over 1,000%. And again, like, it's impossible to know, are you actually growing at a 5% rate? There's way too much intangible, unquantifiable variables. But that is what this process describes. Someone who's actually creating tangible change in their behavior on a week-to-week basis might be improving 5% per week, 10% per week, versus someone who stays at 0% or is just improving 1% per week or 1% per month even. Over the course of years and decades, that is the difference between people who create extraordinary lives and people who just stay exactly where they are until they die. And so, the action step I am trying to incorporate into my life out of this is I'm trying to create a very tangible 4-step process on a weekly basis that I will go through in order to create tangible change in my behavior without it eating up very much time. Like I said, there's 4 steps to this process. I describe them as experience, extraction, integration, and execution. Experience is just doing the thing, going out, living my life, absorbing different experiences, exploring the environment. Then extraction is going through a list of questions in order to identify what lessons can I pull from these experiences? What lessons are actually important? Which of these do I need to prioritize? Then integration is incorporating that into my way of viewing the world, figuring out, how do these lessons fit into my overarching worldview? How can I apply this to my life and my behavior so that this isn't just a new insight, this is a new change in how I function in the world. And execution is creating quantifiable metrics so that I can measure the change in behavior and going out and doing it. So every week, there will be one thing that I'm prioritizing instead of trying to change multiple things at once. There's one thing that I've decided is the highest return on investment for my time, activity that I can focus on, prioritize that, identify these are the changes I'm going to make. Here's how I'm going to quantify this. And next week, I'm going to measure, did it work? Did it not? Why did it work? Why did it not? And repeat the process so that over the course of months and years, every single week, I'm improving and changing in a way that actually leads to tangible growth. So hopefully that process works for me. Hopefully it is something that you can utilize to either build your own system or utilize it how I described it to start speeding up your rate of growth on a week-to-week, month-to-month, and year-to-year basis, so that you can start moving closer to the life you actually want to live. This has been episode 11 of the Progress Theory podcast. I appreciate anyone who is taking the time to listen to this. I know your attention is scarce, your time is valuable, so I appreciate it if you are giving it to me. If you agree with what I had to say or you found some value in it, definitely send a comment or send a message, leave a comment. I love to hear about it. If you disagree with what I had to say, I'd love to hear why you disagree and where I'm wrong, because I'd like to be right, even if that means I have to change my opinion. If you are a man in your 20s who feels you are driven but struggling to actually follow through on what you say you are going to do, check out progresstheory.com. I help men in their 20s who are struggling and feel stagnant overcome that stagnation, build consistency, and follow through on their daily structure. And for anyone else, I appreciate you listening. I wish you all the growth you are looking for in your life, and I will see you next time.